He almost collided with her in the hallway. She was standing there, unmoving, her back pressed against the peeling white wall, eyes wide and unfocused. Blood soaked the front of her uniform, dark, thick, dripping down to the floor. The man shouted and stumbled back, his heart slamming against his ribs. Hoy, ano ba? But when he looked again, there was no blood. The woman blinked, confused. Kuya, okay ka lang? His throat tightened. His hands were shaking. May Dugo ka, he whispered. She looked down at herself and laughed nervously. Huh? Wala. She even spun around, arms out, to prove it. Overtime ka na naman siguro. People passed them, brushing shoulders, unaware that moments ago he had seen her drenched in something that should not exist. He did not laugh back. That night he went home with his chest tight, replaying the image over and over in his head. The way the blood had clung to her clothes, the way it had pooled at her feet, the way it had looked real, too real. He told himself it was stress. He had barely slept for days. Night shifts did that to people. Hallucinations, maybe. His mother had once said exhaustion could make the mind cruel. But 3 days later, the woman did not show up for work. On the fourth day, the supervisor gathered them in the break room. Faces were tense, voices hushed. She was hit by a delivery truck, the supervisor said quietly. Nakamotor siya pauwi. Critical condition. Na-amputate yung kaliwang binte. The room spun. He sat down hard, gripping the edge of the table, as the sound of blood rushing filled his ears. Someone was crying, someone else whispered a prayer, but all he could see was the blood he had seen before it ever happened. That was when he knew. This was not imagination. This was not stress. This was something else. He started noticing it everywhere after that. At the jeepney terminal, a man arguing loudly with a driver, blood dripping from his fingers, splattering onto the concrete. The next morning, the news said a construction worker fell from the third floor of an unfinished building nearby. At the grocery store, a teenage girl texting while walking. Blood streaked across her forehead like war paint. 2 days later, a fire broke out in her neighborhood. He tried to ignore it. He avoided eye contact. He kept his head down. He walked faster, but the blood always found him. Sometimes it was faint, just a smear on someone's sleeve. Sometimes it was everywhere, thick, heavy, impossible to miss. And every single time, something bad followed. He stopped sleeping. At night, he lay awake listening to his heartbeat, replaying faces in his mind. He wondered if he should warn them. He imagined walking up to a stranger and saying, "May masamang mangyayari sa'yo." He imagined their laughter, their anger, the way they would call him crazy. Once he tried. It was an old man sitting outside a sari-sari store, counting coins with trembling fingers. Blood coated his hands, soaking into the money. "Tatay," he said carefully, crouching down. "Okay lang po ba kayo?" The old man looked up, startled. "Huh? Bakit?" He swallowed. May nakikita po kasi ako." The old man's face hardened. "Ano bang sinasabi mo?" "Please po," he said, voice cracking. "Mag-ingat po kayo." The old man stood up abruptly, eyes sharp. "Lumayas ka nga. Nanloloko ka ba?" People stared. Someone muttered, "Baliw ata yan." He left shaking, shame burning his face. The old man collapsed later that afternoon from a heart attack. After that, he stopped trying. He told no one. Not his coworkers, not his friends, not even his family, especially not his mother. She was deeply religious, the kind who kept holy water by the door and rosaries under her pillow. When he was younger, she used to scold him whenever he asked questions about ghosts or spirits. "Huwag mong binubuksan ang pinto," she would say. "May mga bagay na hindi dapat makita." He wondered now if the door had opened on its own. The dream started soon after. He dreamed of blood seeping through walls, dripping from ceilings, flooding hallways. He dreamed of faceless people reaching out to him, their mouths opening but no sound coming out. And always, he woke up with the feeling that someone was watching him. One night, he sat at the edge of his bed, sweat-soaked and trembling, and whispered into the darkness, "Kung ano ka man, tama na." The darkness did not answer. The next morning, he saw blood on his reflection for the first time. It was faint, just a thin line at the corner of his mouth. He leaned closer to the mirror, heart pounding. There was nothing there. He slammed the bathroom door shut and slid down against it, gasping for air. No, he whispered. Hindi pa. Hindi ako. He began carrying a small notebook in his bag. Dates, places, faces, outcomes. He needed proof, for himself if nothing else. He needed to understand the pattern, but there was no pattern. Children, adults, men, women, good people, bad people. The blood did not discriminate. One evening, while waiting for a ride home, he noticed a woman standing across the street. She was holding a child's hand, smiling as she spoke on the phone. Blood poured from the child's head, soaking the woman's arm. His heart dropped. He stepped forward without thinking, crossing the street against the light. 8, he shouted. Sandali lang. The woman turned, confused. Oh? Please, he said, breathless. Wag po muna kayong tumawid. Please lang. Cars honked. The child tugged at the woman's hand. Mama? What is this? The woman snapped. Sino ka ba? Please, he begged, tears forming. Makinig po kayo sa akin. She pulled the child closer. Lumayo ka sa anak ko. The light turned green. They stepped forward. A screech of tires, a scream. The world erupted into noise. He stood frozen as people rushed past him, as blood, real blood this time, spread across the asphalt. That night he did not write in the notebook. He burned it. And for the first time since it started, he asked himself a question that terrified him more than the blood ever had. What if he wasn't meant to stop anything? What if he was only meant to watch? After the accident, he stopped leaving the house unless absolutely necessary. The sound of screeching tires followed him everywhere. Even in silence, he heard it. Even with his eyes closed, he saw the child's blood spreading across the street. Too red, too fast. He had warned them. He had begged. And still, it happened. That was when the guilt became unbearable. His mother noticed first. One morning, she found him sitting at the dining table long after sunrise. Untouched coffee growing cold in front of him. His eyes were hollow, fixed on nothing. Anak, she said gently. Hindi ka na naman natulog? He looked up slowly, as if pulling himself from underwater. Ma, naniniwala ka ba sa mga babala? She frowned. Anong klaseng babala? Yung may mga taong nakakakita bago may mangyari. Her hand froze mid-motion. Bakit mo tinatanong yan? He opened his mouth, then closed it again. The words crowded his throat, desperate to escape, but fear sealed them in. Wala lang, he muttered. She studied him closely. May dinadala ka bang mabigat? He almost laughed. If she only knew. That afternoon, he sat alone in his room when his phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Kamusta ka? His chest tightened. He stared at the screen, fingers trembling. Sino to? A pause, then another message. Yung batang tinulungan mo. His heart dropped. Hindi mo siya nailigtas, pero nakita ka niya. The room felt suddenly smaller. The walls pressed in. Sino ka? He typed, panic rising. Another pause. Longer this time. May mga mata na nakakakita ng hindi para sa lahat. Hindi ka nag-iisa. He threw the phone across the bed, breathing hard. His hands were slick with sweat. He wanted to scream, to run, to disappear. That night the dreams returned, stronger, clearer. He dreamed of standing in a long corridor lined with doors. Each door was stained with blood, some fresh, some dried black. Voices whispered behind them, overlapping, pleading. Sabihin mo sa kanila. Bakit kami? Bakit mo kami nakita? He woke up screaming. The next day he finally sought help, not from a doctor, not from a priest, but from someone his mother once warned him about, the old caretaker at the cemetery. He found the man sweeping fallen leaves near a row of weathered tombstones. The air smelled of damp earth and burning candles. Manong, he said quietly, pwede po ba kitang makausap? The caretaker glanced at him, eyes sharp despite his age. Matagal ka nang hinihintay. His blood ran cold. Ano? You see it, don't you? The man said calmly. Yung marka. He swallowed hard. Anong marka? The caretaker leaned closer. Dugo. The word hit him like a blow. He sat on a cracked stone bench as the man listened, nodding slowly while he poured everything out. The visions, the deaths, the guilt. the fear. His voice broke more than once. Akala ko, he whispered at the end, kung babalaan ko sila, mababago. The caretaker shook his head. Hindi lahat ng babala ay para pigilan. E para saan? He demanded, tears spilling. Para pahirapan ako? Para ihanda ka, the man replied softly. Ihanda para saan? The caretaker looked at him with something like pity. Para sa sarili mo. They performed a cleansing ritual that night. Candles flickered. Oil burned his skin. Prayers mixed with words he didn't understand. For a moment, the world felt quiet. Clear. He dared to hope. The next morning, he saw blood again. This time, it was on his neighbor's door, thick streaks seeping from the wood. He knocked frantically. Ate! Ate, gising po? No answer. He called the barangay. The ambulance arrived too late. He sank to the ground as they wheeled the body out, sobbing openly now, uncaring who saw. Hindi ko na kaya, he whispered. Ayoko na. That night, his mother finally confronted him. Anak, she said, gripping his hands. Anong nangyayari sa'yo? He looked at her, really looked at her, and froze. Blood soaked her blouse. His scream shattered the room. Ma! He cried. Huwag po kayong lalabas. Please! She pulled back, frightened. Ano ang sinasabi mo? Makinig po kayo sa akin, he begged. Manatili lang po kayo dito. She stared at him, tears forming. Natatakot na ako sa'yo. The words cut deeper than any blade. He backed away slowly, horror choking him. No, he whispered. Hindi ikaw. Hindi ikaw. But the blood did not fade. That was when he understood. The visions were getting closer, and no ritual, no prayer, no warning could stop what was coming. He spent the rest of the night sitting beside his mother's door, listening to her breathing, afraid that if he closed his eyes even for a second, he would lose her. And somewhere deep inside, a terrible thought began to take shape. What if the blood was not a warning of death? What if it was a reminder that everyone bleeds eventually? Morning came without relief. He was still sitting on the floor when the sun crept through the curtains, his back against the wall, eyes bloodshot from a night without sleep. His mother opened her door slowly, careful, as if approaching a wounded animal. Anak, she said softly. Halika na, kumain ka. He looked up at her. The blood was gone. He gasped, standing too fast. Mom, okay ka lang? She nodded, confused. Naman. Bakit? His knees nearly gave out. Relief washed over him so suddenly it made him dizzy. Maybe the caretaker was right. Maybe the ritual worked. Maybe this nightmare was finally loosening its grip. He laughed shakily, rubbing his face. Wala. Sorry po. Pagod lang. She studied him, worry etched deep in her features, but said nothing. For 3 days he saw nothing. No blood, no stains, no shadows clinging to people's bodies. He dared to breathe again. On the 4th day, he went back to work. The moment he stepped inside the building, his heart sank. Blood streaked across the walls of the hallway, like handprints dragged by something desperate. It coated the elevator buttons, pooled at the corners of the floor, soaked into the carpet. People walked through it, laughing, talking, oblivious. He pressed his back against the wall, chest heaving. No, he whispered. Hindi puede. A co-worker noticed his pale face. Uy, okay ka lang? He looked at her. Blood poured from her eyes like tears. He screamed. The days that followed blurred together. Everywhere he went, the visions intensified. The blood was no longer limited to people. It seeped into places, objects, reflections. And then one night, as he stood brushing his teeth, the mirror betrayed him completely. His reflection smiled. He did not. Blood covered his face, his neck, his chest. It dripped steadily into the sink, thick and dark, unstoppable. He backed away, shaking his head violently. Hindi totoo, hindi totoo. The reflection spoke. Matagal ka na naming hinahabol. He covered his ears. Tumigil ka. You were never meant to stop anything, the reflection said calmly. You were meant to remember. The mirror cracked. He collapsed to the floor, sobbing, every defense gone. Memories flooded him. Things he had buried so deep he had convinced himself they weren't real. A childhood accident, a fall, blood on the pavement, his blood. a voice screaming his name. He had died once. Not fully, not completely, but enough. That was the price. That was why he could see. The caretaker appeared again at the cemetery that night, as if summoned by his despair. Naalala mo na, the old man said quietly. He nodded, tears streaming. Bakit ako? Dahil bumalik ka, the caretaker replied. At ang mga bumabalik, may dalang tanong. Anong tanong? He whispered. The caretaker looked at him gravely. Kung paano mamuhay kahit alam mong may katapusan. He laughed bitterly. At kung ako na? The caretaker did not answer. The blood returned to his mother the next morning. This time it did not fade. She noticed his terror, his trembling hands. Anak, she said, holding his face. Anong nangyayari? He broke. Ma, he sobbed. Kung may mangyari sa'yo, patawarin mo ako. She pulled him into her arms. Walang mangyayari, nandito lang tayo. He clung to her like a child, memorizing her warmth, her scent, the sound of her breathing. That afternoon, she collapsed in the kitchen. He held her as the ambulance arrived, blood real and warm in his hands this time. As the doors closed, she looked at him one last time. Salamat, she whispered. For what? He cried. Sa pagbabantay. She survived, barely, and he understood then. The visions were not about death. They were about presence, about staying, about loving harder, about paying attention. He still sees the blood. Every day. But now when he does, he stays longer. He listens more. He loves deeper. Because some people are not meant to stop the end. They are meant to witness life before it disappears. And if this story unsettled you, if it made you pause or look at the people around you a little longer tonight, then don't scroll away just yet. Subscribe, like, share this story. Because sometimes the warning isn't in the blood. It's in the time you still have.